Bharat was once a great nation filled up with bright people and great ideas, a nation of science which was at the forefront of technology, medicine, law, dharma, etc. How did the decline occur? The classic and comprehensive work by Sri Dharampal ji has some answers. Before we talk of the book, let me tell you something about Dharampal ji. He was born in 1922 and we are celebrating his centenary this year. Dharampal first saw Gandhi at the age of 8 years in 1929. A year later, Bhagat Singh was executed and he saw many rallying the streets of Lahore shouting slogans in protest right near where he lived. Later, he interacted with associates of Mahatma and it was in England that he visited India Office and British Museum, from where he gathered all matter of his interest, which was India of the 18th and 19th century. He photocopied many things and some he wrote in longhand, spending hours doing it. It was in Sevagram that he finally wrote down the contents of his books. The present book, The Beautiful Tree, India of the 18th century, largely relies on reports of surveys conducted by the British government in parts of southern and eastern India on the status of indigenous education system to understand it and improve it. These surveys, district by district, captured the details of what was the Indian education breathing its last before the British would come and uproot it. The results of the surveys are detailed in the book show beyond doubt that the education system was in place, was self-sufficient, cheap, accessible, and taught a wide variety of subjects relevant to the people. The number of students in schools and colleges, their daily routines, curriculum, and mode of community support is detailed in the work. Caste-wise and religion-wise breakup of the students is given district by district and it is capable of busting many myths around castes formed by Marxist agenda historians. Indigenous education in the past was carried out in Bharat through pathshalas, madrasas and gurukuls. They provided the shiksha and they were watering holes of the culture of traditional communities. School is thus a weak translation of the roles these institutions played in the past. According to Bombay Presidency report by G.L. Prendergast, there is hardly any village, big or small, throughout our territories in which there is not at least one school, and in larger villages, more. On the contrary, England had few schools for common people till 1800. Madras Presidency report by Thomas Munro states that every village had a school. A data on caste-wise presence of students in school revealed that majority belonged to Brahmin and Shudras, followed by Vaishya in Madras Presidency regions. Muslims were few. Most students went to school from age of 5 years and were there up to anywhere between 5 to 10 years on an average. Ramayana and Mahabharata were taught, along with other texts like Panchatantra. In most cases, Brahmins formed a small group studying in schools, but higher learning was dominated by Brahmins. Theology, metaphysics, ethics, and law were mostly studied by Brahmins. However, astronomy and medical sciences were studied by others also. The Vedas and Shastras were taught in Agraharams or homes. Not many girls enrolled. However, Brahmin girls were few. Shudras, especially those joining the Devdasi profession, were many. 13 years later, after Madras Presidency report, came Adams' report on the state of education in Bengal in 1836 and 1838. 1 lakh schools in 1830s was the figure given. That too, in a state of neglect, was the impression given by Adam. It was little wonder, because Adam was an evangelist and hated the Indian education systems. He came to India as a Baptist missionary. A detailed study report with data given on stages of material used was seen, and sandpaper, palm leaf, plantain leaf to paper were the materials used. Commercial and agricultural accounts were taught. Sanskrit was primarily studied by Brahmins. A varied list of subjects ranging from grammar, mythology, Vedanta, law, and others were taught in these Sanskrit schools. Some 45 years later, after Adam, G.W. Littner surveyed the Punjab region. Punjab had 330,000 pupils studying in different classes in 1882. As time passed, however, the decay set in. Karl Marx in his writings in 1853 stated that British had two missions. First was destructive, an annihilation of the Asiatic society, and second, laying the material foundation of the West. Prior to 1770, the British had little interest in education system. They were interested only in trade and Indian statecraft in different empires that existed in India at that time. Later, however, they became serious about ruling our country. Lord Macaulay was asked to submit a report of the same. So, on February 2nd, 1835, Lord Macaulay submitted the Minute on Education. He said, "We must at present do our best to form a class who may be interpreters between us and millions whom we govern, a class of persons Indian in blood and colour, but English in tastes, in opinions, in morals and in intellect." To Macaulay, Indian Sanskrit books and contents were not equal to what was offered in English schools in England. He also felt that a shelf of English books was equivalent to a whole library of Indian knowledge. Such was his dislike for Indian education system. The best way to do away with the system, he thought, was to cut off the smooth functioning of these institutions that got revenue from the villagers to run the institutions. And that is exactly what the Britishers did. Karl Marx too was of the opinion that Indian life had always been undignified, stagnated, vegetative and passive, and worshipper of nature instead of man being the sovereign of nature, as was contemplated in the contemporary European thought. Mahatma Gandhi's long address at the Royal Institute of International Affairs, London, on 20th October 1931 stated that literacy in India had declined in India in past 50 to 100 years and held British government responsible for it. The damage was already done. The decline of our education system led to the decline of social and cultural life of the people. The fall in economic sphere led to fall in socio-economic status and personal dignity of people. What is worse is that Indians were kept in the dark about this past. It will take some more time to regain our lost dignity and pride. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Do like, share and subscribe. And yes, do let me know what you would like to hear from me.